Hello, hello. Hey, welcome everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hoping my connection is okay. We're having terrible weather right now. My name's Axel from Good Speaking English. I'm live right now. Where am I live right now? Facebook and YouTube. Live right now on Facebook and YouTube. And I'm going to be checking out this article today. So, if you don't know, I do lots of classes with people who are learning English, and I like to do article-based classes these days. So I've been working through a series of different articles, and this is the one that I'm going to be checking out over the next little while. So this one is all about actor pay in the age of streaming. So the 1 cent paycheck, here's the awful truth about being an actor in the golden age of streaming. So I'm going to be talking about this one with some of my students over the next little while. So what we're going to do today during this live is I am going to read through this article. You'll be able to hear the pronunciation. I'm going to talk about some of the vocabulary, interesting phrases that come up here. Hopefully to help you understand this article a little bit better and maybe learn some new vocabulary and phrases that will help you talk about streaming and entertainment and issues surrounding actors. Lots of interesting vocabulary. And then if you are interested in having a conversation or several about this or a lesson, you can contact me. Get in touch. I can give you some information about my conversational classes and lessons. You can send me an email at goodspeakingenglish@gmail.com or send me a message on Telegram. Telegram is probably the best place to get a hold of me. And just mention 1 cent paycheck in your message. So, like I said, I'm going to go through this a little quick. I'm going to read it. You'll be able to hear the pronunciation. We're going to discuss some of the vocabulary phrases, maybe some grammar points. I think mostly vocabulary in this one. And then you'll be able to rewatch this. You'll be able to study it and use that as a reference. And then practice your speaking with me during a class. Alright, so let's get to it. This is, I should say too, so feel free to ask some questions. There haven't been a lot of people coming out, or at least interacting during article classes, but, so I won't be asking too many questions, but feel free to, say something if there's maybe something you don't understand, or maybe you have a question about some of the vocabulary and things like that, or some of the issues that are talked about in the article, actually. Yeah, so if you have any comments about it, just let me know. I'm just gonna grab something quick. There you go. Anyways, yeah, so don't be shy. I can see your comments on Facebook. I can see them on YouTube. So, if you have anything you'd like to say regarding this article, I will try to pay attention and I will respond. Alright. Just grabbing my notes here really quickly. Alright. Let's get right to it, because I have a bunch of stuff I gotta do today. Anyways, right. So, the 1 cent paycheck, here's the awful truth about being an actor in the golden age of streaming. You know what I'm gonna talk about first? I'm gonna talk about this here. The spelling of paycheck. Because this is like the British way of spelling paycheck, right? But in the US, they would spell it this way. C-H-E-C-K. But here in Canada as well, it is common to use the British spelling as well. They will use a Q-U-E, so that's kind of an interesting little detail to know about. If you are writing an exam, for example, like a Cambridge exam or something like that, you really need to pick one way of spelling and stick to it. So decide if you're either going to use British English or with British like spelling, or American spelling. So that's kind of interesting. It doesn't matter which one you pick, you just have to be really consistent with it. So paycheck here with a QUE, that's going to be British spelling of this, and then paycheck with a CK, American spelling. All right, so the one said paycheck. Here's the awful truth about being an actor in the golden age of streaming. And usually when we talk about an age of something, we're talking about a period of time. That's what we mean here. Period of time. And golden, as in it's supposed to be a really good time. That's what they're talking about. So this is like a, you know, there's so many things to stream these days, right? So it's really become the way to watch television, movies, things like that. So this is definitely the time for streaming. So yeah, so the perfect period for that. Another interesting word too, here is the awful truth. Awful, something that is awful is really bad, really terrible. So not a good word at all. Awful, something really bad, maybe really upsetting. So in this case, the truth about being an actor is not that great, as we are going to discover in this article. Anyways, let's talk about the tagline here really quickly before we move on. So, while streaming services rake in hundreds of millions of dollars, many TV stars can't even afford heating or are somehow paid in negative figures. No wonder they're on strike. So while streaming services rake in hundreds of millions of dollars, so rake in, great little phrase here. Very informal way to say basically you earn a lot of money. So to make a lot of money, probably really easily. In a very literal sense, I'm going to show you what a rake is, actually. A rake is this tool that you might use for cleaning up the yard in autumn, for example, when all the leaves fall off the trees. Here, this guy here has like a very large rake, very wide rake, but we can see it's something that's easily used to collect things off the ground. So similarly, we could use it to rake in money, easily collect a lot of money. So that's what they mean. So while streaming services rake in hundreds of millions of dollars, many TV stars can't even afford heating or are somehow paid in negative figures. Talking about figures here, we mean numbers, and in this case in particular, not just any numbers, but like money amounts, dollar amounts here. So and what do we mean by negative figures? The opposite of positive. So it's almost like they owe money, which is interesting. So no wonder they are on strike. So a strike, or so a strike is when workers, you know, they'll stop working to protest something, usually maybe to get better pay, better working conditions, better more benefits. And we say to go on strike. You would say to go on strike. That is sort of how we would use that collocation we would use to say to go on strike. So no wonder they are on strike. All right. First paragraph here. So, the strike by the Screen Actors Guild, American Federation of Television and Radio Artists, SAG-AFTRA, inconveniences a lot of people. It effectively shuts down production on hundreds of films and TV shows, which means that thousands of crew members will be out of work. The lack of stars willing to promote their work means that the festival circuit is functionally kaput. Worst of all, it means that new original scripted content will dry up soon, and I will be forced to write about all sorts of worthless true crime documentaries. This, I'm sure you will agree, is the real tragedy here. All right, okay, so let's go back and just talk about some of these words here. So the strike by the Screen Actors Guild, American Federation of Television, Radio and Radio Artists inconveniences a lot of people. What is a guild? So a guild in this case, basically like a group of people that kind of represents workers, in this case artists, people working in radio, working in television, and they represent workers that are doing this specific work, that are involved in these types of jobs. So you might actually also come across this word if you are a gamer, if you like to play video games, and maybe you play one of those ones where like the MMORPGs or whatever, like the multi, where there's like a lot of players, and then you'll have these massive groups of players that come together. They sort of associate with each other as almost like organization. You'll hear guild used in that context as well. So just basically a group though, like an organization, a group of people that basically work together to accomplish something. In this case, they are representing workers who work in this sector. And just a second here. All right. So the strike obviously inconveniences a lot of people. So, you know, the opposite of something being convenient, if something is an inconvenience, it is something that, you know, causes a lot of trouble, or maybe like a problem for somebody, right? So it is not, it's annoying, right? Kind of annoying, not really serious though, but just something that kind of, a little bit frustrating, all right? So it effectively shuts down production on hundreds of films and TV shows, which means that thousands of crew members will be out of work. The crew members, these are the people that also work on, in this case, on a TV production or a film production. It's basically the people who are behind the scenes. So maybe, you know, the people who do the, like the camera work or the editing or the sound, all sorts of, there's like so many people that are involved in working on a TV show or on a film. So all of these people will be out of work. And another interesting sort of collocation here too, to be out of work just basically means that they don't have work to do, basically. So they'll lose their jobs because of it. Anyway, the lack of stars willing to promote their work means that the festival circuit is functionally kaput. So kaput here is kind of interesting. Kind of an interesting word here. If something is kaput, it basically means like it's dead, like it's shut down. It's shut down, it's dead, right? So if it's functionally kaput, basically, like it's just basically it's no longer working. It's no longer functioning. So in the festival circuit, you know how there's like lots of different festivals maybe around the world. That's what we kind of mean by the festival circuit. You can go from one to another, to another, to another, kind of almost in a bit of a loop. The circuit is usually kind of like a loop. Anyways, the festival circuit, at least the time of this article, pretty much dead. So functionally kaput. And then, worst of all, it means that new original scripted content will dry up soon. Very soon dry up. And I will be forced to write all sorts of worthless true crime documentaries. So something dries up, another kind of interesting little phrasal verb here. So if something literally dries up, usually, like if something gets dry, right, it goes from wet, like a wet state, to a dry state, right? So we might say like if a lake dries up, for example, goes from, you know, wet to dry, you know. If a lake dries up, for example, we mean that all the water basically is evaporated from that lake and it is no longer has water in it. So or it may be like a, you know, pond. Anyways, but here we mean they're using it to mean that it's gonna like stop completely and we're gonna run out of original scripted content. So like things that have been written specifically for TV and movies, all of this scripted content, it's gonna finish soon. They're going to run out of it. And this person in particular, the person who was writing this article, will be forced to write all sorts of worthless true about all sorts of worthless true crime documentaries. So true crime, kind of sort of this genre of TV. Crime has to do with, you know, sort of like murders or other criminal activity, things like that, right? And it's kind of like this sort of like this genre documentary, like a documentary that kind of examines real life things, right? They kind of like look at the different crimes and then they sort of discuss the case. So maybe they will interview witnesses, people involved in the case, things like that. So so this person is saying that they'll have to go and write about those sort of things. So yes, I'm sure you will agree that is the real tragedy here. And so he's kind of joking that this tragedy, that is going to be like the most terrible situation, sad situation out of everything. Very unfortunate situation. All right, next paragraph. So nevertheless, nevertheless, as inconvenient as it may be, the strike feels vital for for the future of the acting industry. As with the Writers Guild of America strike, when we learned that a writer for critical darling The Bear was paid so badly it left him overdrawn and he had to work in an apartment with no heating after the studio refused to fly him to the writer's room in Los Angeles, details are emerging about the difficulty of being a working television actor in the age of streaming. So, nevertheless, regardless of all of this, as inconvenient as it may be, so again, we've had inconvenience up here, inconvenient, here's the adjective. As inconvenient as it may be, the strike feels vital, incredibly important for the future of the acting industry. So regardless of how annoying everything is, it's really important if the acting industry is going to be able to function in the future, right? So like the other strike that happened, there was this other strike, right? So as with the Writers Guild of America strike, when we learned that the writer for Critical Darling, so just basically a really important TV show, The Bear, was paid so badly that it left him overdrawn and he had to work in an apartment with no heating. If you are overdrawn, if you overdraw your bank account, it basically means that you take out more money, because you draw money from a bank account. So you take out money, and if you are overdrawn, that means you've taken out too much money. So you basically owe money. So you have a negative amount. You have below zero amount, right? So this person was paid so badly that he overdrew his account. He took out too much money, and he had to work in an apartment with no heating because he couldn't afford heat after the studio refused. So they would not fly him to the writer's room in Los Angeles. So details are emerging about the difficulty of being a working television actor in the age of streaming. So details are emerging. They are becoming known, right? They're coming out. We are learning all about this. So So this strike sort of told us about this one, and similarly, the strike that they're talking about in this article also telling us how, like, why it's so difficult to be an actor in this day and age with streaming. All right, so this was underlined by a recent feature in the New Yorker concerning the miserable compensation received by cast members of on the Netflix series Orange is the New Black. Kimiko Glenn, who played Brooke Sozo, posted a video on Instagram in which she opened a SAG-AFTRA foreign royalty statement, and despite starring on a huge award-winning series that helped pave the way for the current glut of streaming originals, discovered she had been paid just $27.30, about £21. Another cast member, Matt McGorry, replied to the post revealing that he had to keep his day job throughout filming because he couldn't support himself on his acting salary. A further star, Beth Dover, revealed that after deducting travel expenses, she lost money on the show. Okay, so lots of interesting things in here. Let's go back up to the top. So this was underlined, so like highlighted again, underlined, so again, like highlighted by a recent feature. So a feature, sort of a main article in the New Yorker. New Yorker is a magazine, so in a very sort of one of the main articles in this magazine concerning the miserable compensation received by cast members on this Netflix series. So compensation, the amount of money you make off of doing something, the amount of money you are paid for a job, basically. And usually miserable might be used to explain a feeling, like an emotion. Like if you are miserable, you are really sad. But in this case, we are actually using it to say that it's that the pay is incredibly poor. So we could use miserable also to sort of describe things that have that are like really bad or just of poor quality or something. So miserable compensation in this case, very poor, very bad pay, unfair pay, miserable living conditions, for example, another example. So maybe somebody's like living in sort of like a house, maybe falling apart, maybe really dirty, so miserable living conditions, for example. So we can use miserable that way as well too, to sort of describe situations or things that are not of very good quality, basically. So that's kind of interesting. Right. So this was underlined, right? So pointed out in this article about the miserable compensation, the bad pay received by cast members of the Netflix series Orange is the New Black. Right. So Kimiko Glenn, this person, posted a video on Instagram in which she opened a SAG-AFTRA foreign royalty statement. So statement here, basically a document. In this case, a statement is often a document that details maybe like how much money you have or how much money you owe. You might know this word from like a bank statement as well, which is basically a summary of your account that shows maybe your income and expenses, like everything that came out, everything that went in, that sort of thing. And here, royalties when we are talking about TV, these are sort of, if you get royalties off of a TV show or royalties maybe off of a book, this is money that you earn every single time a show is played again. So every single time a show is aired again, I should say, because you air a TV show. So a royalty, money you make every time a TV show is aired. So the royalty statement is basically this piece of paper that shows how much money you've made from the repeated plays or the sales, something like that. So she posted this Instagram video where she opened this statement, and despite starring on a huge award-winning series that helped pave the way for the current glut of streaming originals, so she was on this, right? So you would think that she had a lot of money, but that did not happen. And if something paves the way for something, that basically means that, like, this series in particular, right? Something that paves the way for something, they are like the first person or first thing to basically do something that makes it possible for others to do it in the future. So if you pave the way for something, you basically make it possible for somebody else to do something in the future. So they were one of the original, streaming series that made it really popular, and now there are all sorts of other. In fact, there is a glut of streaming originals. So glut is kind of interesting. Glut isn't really a word that I would use a lot. But you might know the word maybe like gluttony. There you go, gluttony. Which is kind of one of the 7 deadly sins or whatever. Basically, gluttony is when you consume too much of something, right? Or a glutton would be someone who consumes too much of something. So maybe like too much food, for example. Usually it's, equated with food or something. But it could be other things too, right? And here, so a glut is something, again, connected to the same idea. Just like there's too many of them. so Orange is the New Black basically made it possible for all the other original streaming shows that we see right now. And they're saying that, there's too many of them, basically. So many of them. Anyways, she discovered that she had only been paid $27.30, or about 21 pounds. So another cast member, Matt McGorry, replied to the post revealing that he had to keep his day job throughout filming. So the day job, this is kind of your regular job. Something that you do basically here 9 to 5. The main job that supports you, right? The main thing that you do to make a living, and then anything else aside from that maybe could be like a part-time job or a side hustle, or but your day job, that is the main way that you make money, right? So he had to keep his day job throughout filming because he couldn't support himself. So he couldn't support himself. He couldn't make enough money to live off of. So he couldn't support himself off of his acting series salary. It was not enough to sustain his life, basically. A further star, Beth Dover, revealed that after deducting travel expenses, she lost money on the show. So travel expenses being expenses, things that you pay in order to do something like bills and things like that. So in this case, maybe money for airfare, or, the transportation, cabs, things like that in the city. So, and if you deduct something, that means that you subtract something. So usually we would deduct expenses from something. That's basically after subtracting all of those costs. She found that she lost money on this show, which means that she actually had to pay her own money to be on the show. She did not earn money. She actually ended up costing her more to be on the show. She basically paid herself to be on the show. She did not make money, she lost money. That would be the opposite. So that's kind of interesting. So one of the issues here, and one that is driving the SAG negotiations, is a lack of residual rates, similar to TV royalties offered by streaming services. Previously, a guest star on a series could expect a cut of the money whenever an episode was re-aired anywhere, and this could help sustain them through the leaner times that most actors experience. But streamers such as Netflix don't re-air episodes because all their content is constantly available to be watched by anyone around the world whenever they want. So, as the New Yorker reports, Emma Miles can still make hundreds of dollars a year for a few spots on the traditionally broadcast Law and Order Special Victims Unit, but only $20 a year for Orange is the New Black, which she worked on for 6 years. So that's kind of interesting, right? Okay, so one of the issues, one of the problems here, and one that is driving the SAG negotiations, so the discussions, right? The negotiation is a discussion where you're trying to reach an agreement or something, in this case about money, right? So one of the issues is the lack of residual rates. So here for streaming, they refer to it as residual rates, so kind of the same as TV royalties. So basically, again, money that actors would earn every single time a show is streamed in this case. So they call it residual rates, but the same as like the royalties, the money they get every time something is viewed. So previously a guest star, so maybe somebody who was so an actor that maybe they're not in a series all the time, but they maybe appear once or twice. So a guest star could expect a cut of the money whenever an episode was re-aired anywhere, and this could help sustain them through the leaner times that most actors experience. So this could help support them through the leaner times. Actually, here you go. I'm getting ahead of myself. The guest star, so a person who's like an actor who appears only once, right? So a guest star could expect a cut of the money, So if you get a cut of money, so you get a cut of something, basically, in this case, it means that you get part of something. And we'll use this a lot, talking about money, maybe. Typically money, yeah. So you'll get, like, part of the money. So previously, people that were, on 1 or 2 episodes could expect a little bit of money every single time an episode was re-aired or re-shown anywhere, and this could help sustain them, could help support them through the leaner times. So leaner times here, those are periods where there's like less money, basically, or less work, where maybe it's a lot harder to make a living, right, to earn money. So so it would help support them basically through those more difficult periods, right? But streamers such as Netflix don't re-air episodes because all their content is constantly available. So it's always available to be watched by anyone around the world whenever they want. So as this New Yorker reports, Emma Miles can still make hundreds of dollars a year for a few spots, a few times, like a few appearances, basically, on the traditionally broadcast Law and Order Special Victims Unit. So traditionally, as in like it's on TV. So she'll make a few $100s for a few appearances, basically, on this show that's on TV, but only $20 a year from Orange is the New Black, which she worked on for 6 years. So she was working on that for a very long time, but she does not make a lot of money off of it. So that is interesting. So this isn't to say that Orange is the New Black is especially terrible either, as the strike begins to bite. More and more actors are revealing how hard streaming has made it for them to make a living. Kendrick Sampson, an actor who has spent the past half-decade working on shows including The Flash, Insecure, and I'm a Virgo, recently wrote a thread revealing that he received 50 residual checks for his work over the past year, but they totaled just $86. Brandy Evans from P-Valley posted a TikTok of a residual check she received for exactly 1 cent. Camille McFadden, an actor who has worked on I Think You Should Leave, Casey Undercover, and Millennials, tweeted a scrolling list of his recent residuals, many of which somehow detailed negative figures. So this is kind of interesting. Yeah, so this isn't to say that Orange is the New Black is especially terrible either. So they're saying that so it turns out that this one isn't like unique, and it isn't the worst of the worst, basically, what they're saying. So as the strike begins to bite, so as it begins to take hold, basically, or have sort of serious effect, more and more actors are revealing, they are showing how hard streaming has made it for them to make a living. So another very common common phrase that we say, to make a living, earn enough money to live off of. Okay, so it's made it really hard for them to support their lifestyles, basically. So Kendrick Sampson, an actor who has spent the past half-decade, so 5 years, half a decade, working on shows including The Flash, Insecure, and I'm a Virgo, recently wrote a thread revealing and showing that he received 50 residual checks, so 50 of these checks for his work, but all of them together totaled only $86. So we got 50 checks amounting to $86, which is a bit crazy. So this other person, Brandy Evans, posted a TikTok of a residual check that she received for exactly 1 cent. So another check with only 1 cent. And this Camille McFadden, an actor who's worked on I Think You Should Leave, Casey Undercover, Millennials, tweeted a scrolling list. If you scroll, you basically move through content, like on your phone, you scroll with your thumb or your finger, right? Move it up. So she posted this very long list of all of his recent residual checks, many of which detailed negative figures. So figures here again, talking about money, the amount of money, and they're actually, for some reason, he lost money on them. He didn't make any money at all. In fact, it sounds like he owed money or something. So it is a lousy situation, and is not helped by the fact that many people think all television actors must be dripping with money. They have heard about the vast sums of money made by the cast of Friends, The Simpsons, and Big Bang Theory, and assume that this level of opulence applies all the way down the line, which isn't the case at all. To qualify for SAG-AFTRA health insurance, an actor is required to earn $26,470 from acting or residuals each year. It has been claimed that 75% to 90% of members are not able to reach this threshold. Even household names can fall foul to this. 2 years ago, Sharon Stone lost her union health coverage after earning $13 less than the minimum figure. Right, okay, so it is a lousy situation, something that is lousy, just bad, or unfair in this case, but like something lousy. Not good, not a good situation. And it is not helped by the fact that many people think that all television actors must be dripping with money. What do we mean? We just mean extremely rich. You know, people have this perception, they have this assumption that if you are an actor, you must be extremely rich, make a lot of money, must be dripping with money. So this is not helping the situation, basically, what they're saying. So they have heard about the vast sums of money, vast sums made by the cast of Friends, Simpsons, with the Big Bang Theory. So here again, so sums, like the amount of money in something vast is very big. So the vast sums, these large amounts of money made by the cast of Friends, The Simpsons, and Big Bang Theory. And they assume that this level of opulence applies all the way down the line. So opulence, again, another word here, just referring to like wealth or like luxury, you know, showing off that you have a lot of money here. So they assume that this level of wealth, opulence, money applies all the way down the line, like at the lower levels, basically. So all the way down the line to the lower levels as well. So so to all people, basically. So, and which isn't the case at all. Which isn't the case at all. If something isn't the case at all, which isn't the case at all, it means it is not true. So this isn't true at all, basically, what they're saying. So to qualify for SAG-AFTRA health insurance, so in order to get, in order to have like the right things to get this health insurance, an actor is required to earn $26,470 from acting or residuals each year. So they have to reach this amount of money, they have to make this amount of money in order to get this health insurance. So it has been claimed that 75 to 90% of members are not able to reach this threshold, so to reach this amount, basically in this case, the minimum amount that's needed to do something. So a very large percentage of people, a lot of people are unable to make that amount of money, so they cannot get the health insurance. So even household names can fall foul to this. A household name, these are people, these are like famous people. A household name, basically famous people that you might know in a household, right? Just that like a common celebrity, common name that people would know. So even household names can fall foul to this. So basically they are sometimes affected by this as well. So 2 years ago, Sharon Stone lost her union health coverage after earning $13 less than the minimum figure. So she earned $13 less than the lowest amount she needed, basically. All right, so at the bottom end of the scale, so at like the lowest end in terms of pay and status, a background performer will make the equivalent of 142 pounds a day for insecure, irregular work. But even that is being chipped away at. SAG claims that background artists are now having their likeness scanned when they sign on for a project, with studios apparently reusing them in other work without consent or compensation. This is interesting. So at the bottom end of the scale, so at the lowest level, in this case in terms of, you know, pay or in terms of status, a background performer, so a background performer or a background actor, these are people, they don't have any lines, they don't have any speaking parts, but they're just kind of shown in, you know, the background of a scene, right? So they're just kind of in the background. So they will make the equivalent of 142 pounds a day for insecure, irregular work. We talk about something insecure, in this case, something not reliable, very unstable. So it's not stable, very unstable. And irregular work, something is irregular. It doesn't happen frequently. It doesn't happen regularly on a consistent basis. It is the opposite, right? So basically, the work is not predictable, right? So they have this unpredictable work. So, but even that is being chipped away at. So even that is being slowly reduced. It's being slowly reduced in this case. Or, you know, like weekend is being slowly taken away at. So they're reducing the amounts. So SAG claims that background artists are now having their likenesses scanned when they sign on for a project. So when they agree to do a project, their likenesses are scanned. Likeness here, we mean that they're making a digital copy of these people's appearances. So they're creating a replica, basically, of the person, like how they look, how they act, their behavior. So they're creating a bit like a copy, like a digital or a visual copy, whenever they agree to do a project. With studios apparently reusing them, so using them over again in other work without consent, so without permission or compensation. So they're not getting paid for it, and they're not even being asked if they can reuse them in other TV shows or movies. So they're not getting permission, they're not getting consent. So that's kind of interesting. So they're making copies of them to use later on. Yeah. So obviously, this points at a miserable present and a worse future. And it's especially unfair when studio bosses are earning hundreds of millions of dollars a year. It is hard not to see this and want to support the strikes however you can. And if this means I have to sit through another miserable true crime documentary, it is a sacrifice worth making. All right. So obviously, again, this points at a miserable present and a worse future. So again, we're using miserable here to describe this situation. So the present as in right now. So it indicates that the current situation is really terrible, and the future is probably going to get worse as well. And is especially particularly unfair when the studio bosses, the people at the top, are earning hundreds of millions of dollars a year. So it is hard not to see this and want to support strikes however you can. So if you know this, if you know this, you will want to support the strikes, basically. And if that means I have to sit through yet another miserable, another terrible true crime documentary, it is a sacrifice worth making. A sacrifice is something you basically give up in an attempt to sort of, you give up something for a greater goal, basically. So you sacrifice something for the greater good or to achieve a greater goal. So for them, it's a sacrifice worth making. If something is worth doing, worth making, it means that, you know, it's important to do, or it's worth doing, it's valuable, even if it's really difficult, right? So in this case, they're saying that, you know, the sacrifice, giving up this TV show is worth doing in order for the actors to be supported over the long term. Anyways, all right, so some interesting words in here, interesting topic as well too. So a lot of kind of interesting things in here, interesting things to digest. I hope that this was somewhat helpful. I definitely recommend rewatching this video again for the pronunciation, the vocabulary and things like that. You know, you can use the video to sort of practice the pronunciation of some of these words. I will also share these notes as well. I will put them in the comments, I'll put them in the video description of this video on YouTube, so you will have this as a reference as well. So I highly recommend you go back, study it a little bit, pick up some new vocabulary phrases that you found interesting, start incorporating them into your speaking a bit. And then if you would like to get talking about this with me, I have lots of material all about this article and this topic. Really interesting article to talk about. You can send me an email, getspeakingenglish@gmail.com, or send me a message on Telegram, Axel_of_getspeakingenglish, and I can give you information about how you can do a couple classes about this with me. So we can either do conversation classes, just practice talking about this with some corrections and feedback from me, or we could do this as lessons as well and focus more about the vocabulary, phrases, maybe do some writing, that sort of thing. We could do some homework and things. You can get feedback from me during lessons on like homework and writing and things like that. So they're really good. Anyways, that's it. I hope this was helpful. If you like this, give it a like, give it a thumbs up, give it a like. Also feel free to follow me, follow the Facebook page, follow me on YouTube. And yeah, hopefully I will see you soon then for class. If you have any questions, just reach out to me on email or Telegram, and I will be happy to help you. Okay, anyways, have a great afternoon, everybody. All right, bye.